working on removing the drip rails from the 67 Chevelle. I originally was going to reuse these drip rails and just leave them in place, but once I got the roof skin and the quarters off of it, they were in a little bit worse shape than I had anticipated. And so you can see right here in this section, the structure, the frame or the bracing structure behind the drip rails actually rotted through. So I'm going to come in and I'll patch that up and get that all squared away. But even the drip rails themselves were a little rotted out in this area where water has a tendency to run down and collect. So it's a shame that just a little spot here would ruin it for the rest of the piece. But as I'd mentioned before, they're a little bit rougher than I'd like to deal with, considering the amount of work and sheet metal that I'm putting into this car. So sure, I could probably have come in here and patched this up a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and put new ones on. AMD is now making them, so hopefully they'll fit okay. If nothing else, I'm hoping that the aftermarket trim, the drip rail molding that they make, will actually fit the aftermarket channels better than the factory channels. So we'll worry more about that when we get to that point, but I wanted to just provide a quick overview of how I go about this. So if you're lucky enough, you'll be able to see the spot welds in this drip rail molding. So you can see here's a spot weld, and they just kind of run every few inches along the drip rail itself. Now, once you start getting up into a section like I have here, they're a little bit harder to locate, but you can oftentimes just rub your finger in there and you'll start to get a good feel for where they are. The other thing to maybe pay attention of is a lot of times those spot welders will leave just a little bit of a nub or a burr, and a lot of times you can feel for that, and then you'll get a pretty good idea of where that spot weld is. But again, you may be in a situation where you can see each one of those spot welds. So I kind of left this at various stages just so you could see what I do here. So what I'll do is I'll come in and I'll just drill a little pilot spot here with a drill bit. You could use a punch as well if you've got a spring activated punch. That will work as well. But I just come in and I find each of the spot welds, and I just go ahead and drill myself just a little starter spot here. So that way when I get to the spot welding, the pilot has something to rest in and it won't walk as much. You can see here it walked a little bit on me. But I just use Blair spot weld cutters. I don't have a fancy gun. These are a little bit nicer than maybe some of the other styles that you can find. These are pretty nice. The one thing that they don't have that some of the other spot welders have is they don't have a ridge on here to keep them from going too deep. So you want to be really careful that you don't get too aggressive on this drip rail because it's not very heavy gauge. You could easily go through this and the bracing underneath it, and then you just have a big hole there. So what I'll do then after I get that little pilot spot started is I'll just come in and I'll cut, kind of guess here, but I'll just kind of cut into the piece that I want to remove, probably getting down into the piece underneath it just a little bit, but not so much that I'm drilling through it. And so I just kind of get each of those started and try to get that cut out. The next thing that I'll do then is I'll just come in with my chisel, my air hammer, and I'll just drive it in kind of up close to where I've started cutting in that spot weld. And now what I'll do is I'll just get on it with my spot weld cutter. Because that chisel bit is underneath there, there's some pressure. And as soon as I get all the way through the drip rail, it'll actually pop away, and then that'll prevent me from drilling into the bracing underneath it. So I'll just kind of do that all along here as we go. Now I may be lucky enough here where I've already gotten deep enough into the drip rail molding that as I bring that chisel through, it'll just pop right off. And so I'll just chisel all the way down. If it stops and I can't get the spot weld to break away, I'll get back on it with my spot weld cutter. Now I'm going to walk around to the other side of the car because I've got this drip rail out already. And so as you can see here, this is essentially what you'll have left after you get that drip rail out of there. So it's pretty straightforward. The other thing that I do, I don't know that I needed to do this, but I actually did intentionally drill through in a couple of spots. And what I'll do is I'll use these as reference points when I put the new drip rail molding up there. And then of course I've kept the original that I pulled off. Now, if you do this and you're patient and you do this the right way, you'll be able to get that drip rail molding off of there in one piece, and it won't be all smashed up or cut up, twisted up. You'll be able to get that thing off of there in one piece. So that's really the goal here, is get that off in one piece, and then you can use it as well as a point of reference when you're ready to put the new pieces on. So I haven't ordered those new AMD pieces yet. I probably should have before I rip these off, but I'm going to go ahead and finish taking off the other side, and then maybe I'll provide an update when I get around to actually putting the AMD drip rails onto the car.